Starting off with some somber and upsetting news today. I lost.
Who is that sad for?
For me.
Oh, well, I mean, I feel like most of the podcast was rooting for me anyway, so...
And everyone that has to watch me attempt to do a kickflip.
That's also wonderful news for everybody involved.
No, it's really not.
It is. So, if anybody didn't see the video that we did for The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, we had attempted to pronounce Icelandic words, and then we let you guys vote on Twitter on who won, and you guys picked that I won, and he has to now do a kickflip as his penance, I guess. So if you haven't seen the video yet, it is up on YouTube. Please go check it out. We were supposed to have already posted a video for the 10 Things I Hate About You podcast that came out last Wednesday, but life got in the way, and we're behind.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So, you want to tell them or no?
Well, I mean, we announced it on Twitter, so you can tell them.
So, over the weekend, I asked Shay to marry me, and she said yes, surprisingly.
I know, I don't know why, but here we are. So, we're behind on the videos, but there should be a video for 10 Things I Hate About You coming out this weekend, and his kick clip should come out probably around Friday, I'm hoping, praying. That'll be a short little Twitter video if you guys want to check it out. So I think that's all of the housekeeping stuff we need to do. So I'm Shay.
I'm Tyler.
And this is Cinematically Correct. And this week we did the movie The Finest Hours, which was your pick.
Yes, The Finest Hours. It's a movie about a book, and the book is about a true story.
It's like a movie within a movie within a movie.
It's not a movie within a movie. It's a movie that's based off a book that is based off of the real life story of some Coast Guardsmen in Chatham, which is down in the Cape in Mass, where we live, because all of our movies somehow relate back to Massachusetts somehow.
You picked it.
Well, yeah, because it's my dad recommended the book. He really enjoyed the book, and I was anxious to see the movie. I want to read the book. I haven't done it. It's on my list to read, but I wanted to watch the movie, and that's how this got started.
Okay, so do you want to give a brief synopsis of what the movie is?
All right, I guess. Brief synopsis. There's a storm in 1952. Mm-hmm. There are 2 oil tankers. We only see one of them, really. And that...
Don't you see parts of the other one?
Well, it's the same boat. It broke in half.
Oh, okay. I thought at the beginning you saw parts of the other one.
No, so you see the one boat that broke in half. There's 2 of them, apparently, that are almost identical that broke apart in the same storm. Because regulations weren't a thing, I guess, back then. And so the Coast Guard is focused on one of them for the most part, and then they find out about this new one, and they send out a ragtag team of Coast Guard sailors to rescue them, and that's the movie in a nutshell.
Okay. So the beginning of the movie starts off with Bernie and his friend, which for some reason... Gus, okay. In a car talking about meeting this girl, Miriam, and he's explaining how he's really only talked to her on the phone, like they've been, talking for a while, and they're finally going to meet in person, and he's super nervous about it, and his friend is like, don't be nervous, like, people seeing you has never been a problem, because I'm assuming that he must have been a very attractive guy, and Chris Pine's cute, but, yeah, I mean, okay.
He's not your stereotypical Hollywood guy.
Right. But I liked that part because it kind of like relates to now where we meet people online and we talk to these people for like so much time and then we finally meet them after so long. Like I guess for some reason I didn't think that was as common back then, that you met somebody almost virtually. And not virtually because it's a phone, but I don't know what word you would use.
They were corresponding by phone, letters, so forth, whatever they were doing before.
I didn't really think of it as you met somebody that way before. Like, I thought, like, you met somebody, and then you might have kept up an online or phone conversation.
Now, is that part of it true? Because
Yep, I read that in the true story, they did correspond through phone. I think they did have a happenstance meeting. I forget exactly what the exact story was, but they... for the most part, we're corresponding through phone for a very long time.
Well, because I had read somewhere when I was doing the research on this that they actually were, the timeline for that was off in the movie from what happened in real life, where they hadn't even really gotten together. They just got together in the movie, and then she magically cares about him going off to sea.
Okay. Okay, I know where you want to go with this. I get it. But yeah, so the timeline is off from the movie to the real story from what I understand, and I believe the book adheres more to the true story.
No, that's fair. That the book adheres more closely to the actual story. I don't know. I haven't read the book. It's on my list, and I've been meaning to read it for a while now.
No, I haven't read it either. I think I'm actually going to add it to my book club because I have like my choice coming up in a few months.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to do that. So the book's by Casey Sherman and I think it's Michael Tugis. I'm not exactly sure how to say that last name, but he's a Boston-based author.
Well, yes.
I think they both are.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to read it, but I did do a lot of research into movie versus book because I'm like obsessed with movies that turn into books.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, it's a problem. And normally I like to read the book before I watch the movie, but just, life. So that didn't happen.
You failed on every movie adaptation of a book we've done for the podcast so far on that.
Well, right, for the podcast. But generally, before the podcast started, I would always read books before I'd hit the movies. But I'm actually liking this better because I have a chance to appreciate the movie before I pick it apart and say, this didn't happen in the book and this is wrong. But anyway, so their relationship is very different from that. But I did like the little pieces that they put in about, like, talking over the phone and things like that. Because not things that I would have thought of for that time and era. Like, I just,
It just seems different than I would... My expectation, and I believe this is how my grandparents met, was in person. They just happened to run into each other somewhere, got to talking, and that was it.
Right, and that's basically how I always pictured it. But I do think in the real story they did meet somehow before they became phone buddies. But regardless, anyway. So the movie continues into, watching their relationship kind of grow. I think there was like a year or two that they let pass by. I'm not exactly sure.
It was something like that. There was a time lapse at the start of the movie. And it was a bit odd. Just, I don't know. It goes from 1951 to 1952, and
I'm sure we just didn't see the months because I wasn't wearing my glasses and could not see the screen.
Right.
So that's probably
Part
things
of it.
I should do. But so there was probably either a month or a few months or maybe a year or something of that nature that went on, and then we see them at a kind of like a dance type thing.
Yeah, it's like a ballroom, like dance parlor or something. I don't know. It's just like an event of some kind, I guess.
Right. And Miriam goes outside and ends up asking him to marry her, and he says no. And then she kind of like whines a little bit.
Well, I would imagine it would hurt if someone said no to that question.
Right. And then eventually he says yes, he's going to hit. It was more like I guess if you really put it that way.
It was not the greatest backtrack in history, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah. So, in the real story, that did happen. She did propose, and he did say no. It sounded a lot sweeter when I read the stuff about it.
I would imagine so, because if that happened in real life, you're never taking me back.
Right. So now, I want to say, as a disclaimer, I think we are more critical of this relationship because of where we are in our relationship, that, we're kind of like all caught up in the whole like cutesy romantic crap that I don't normally even subscribe to. But that's just where we are right now. So I think watching this, we were a little bit more critical, but I saw that, the no and her convincing him, and I just wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan of the relationship. I didn't think they had chemistry.
I totally agree. I thought that was one of the main things that bothered me for the movie. Watching it, is I was like, this woman doesn't have any connection to the main protagonist. Doesn't have any connection to Chris Pine or Bernie, and there's just nothing there. It was just kind of like two people showing up for a job and mailing it in. Right.
Now, so there's a few things. Like, I understand, one, that it's a movie, so you have to keep the time frame short. And it was already almost a 2-hour movie?
Something like that, yeah.
So, I understand they didn't have enough time to really build out that relationship because they really did need to get into the tragedy or heroic event, or both, I guess you can call it. But I do feel like I needed to relate to them more because she becomes such a central character in the movie. Not the true story, but in the movie. And I feel like that scene made me so annoyed with her and the relationship that I couldn't, like...
Well, it's just so different. In the true story, she was home with the flu, right?
Yes.
So she was not even in this... I mean, other than being already married to Bernie and then just at home sick.
Right. And apparently, according to the book, it opens with Bernie taking care of her being home with the flu.
Right.
So, but the movie really kind of played it as you kind of wanting to root for her and be like, yeah, go girl. And I am all about that. Like, I want to be all about the strong, independent woman. But I really just felt she was whiny and kind of entitled, and there was just no chemistry between them. I mean, okay, for example, when the whole thing started, the whole event started, like the next scene, he didn't even call her to tell her he was going out.
Right.
Like, that seems...
Well, it seems almost like she was thrown into this movie to add a female character to this movie.
Ooh, that's a... Ooh.
Because she was not part of the real story. Like, she was at home alone, sick with the flu, so she wasn't involved in anything. She didn't actually...
So you think they inflated her character to add a female...
I think they did add that part to it to try to get that into the movie, honestly.
I don't want to believe that. I mean, it wasn't at the time in Hollywood where we were really that concerned about that, I don't feel like, but it didn't pass the Bechdel test. I will say that. It did not. At all.
Well, it's just, it's not anything other than trying to get some kind of relationship into the movie so that it appeals to a wider base, is what I think.
Well, and I think also, too, though, I'm sure when you're researching a story like this and you're talking to the real-life characters, you want to give everybody a voice.
Right.
And if, I don't know, I know that the only surviving person towards the end was, I lost his name now, but it wasn't Bernie or her. There was only one surviving person when the movie was created, but they all were around when the book was written. Right. So I'm sure that she had some input and, talked about her side and how she felt, and they probably did want to give her a voice because I'm sure she's an amazing woman, and they worked together for 58 years, so they did probably want to make sure that the relationship got in there, so they might have had to add some stuff in there to kind of make the audience care more.
That is fair, because I understand from the book that Bernie spends a lot of time worrying about his wife sick at home when he has bigger problems at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Well, in terms of the not drowning.
Well, right. No, I get that. So, anyways, with that caveat in mind, that followed me throughout the movie.
Yes.
And so, as they continue on, that's something that I could not let go of, which made me scrutinize Bernie a lot more because he was kind of alone for a lot of the movie. She wasn't involved. So I scrutinized his character probably more than I did the rest of the characters, I feel like. But anyways, why don't you explain, the event that happened? So
the event, there's a oil tanker out in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, off the coast of Massachusetts, Cape Cod, that apparently had a fracture in the hull that they welded together.
Which was not true.
Was not true?
Not according to the real story. There was some other problem, but it wasn't a fracture in the hull that was welded.
Okay. Well, regardless, so they're concerned about the ship breaking apart, and then the ship breaks in half. I did like that they threw in the true story of how that happened, or how they found out the ship was not a ship anymore. Where the guy was just walking along one of the catwalks, and then he realized that it just ended. And he looked out and go, okay, that was a boat. Now it's not a boat. What do we do? This is bad. So that was interesting to me. I didn't think a boat could break in half and just float there.
No, I didn't either. I assumed the minute it broke in half, it just...
Well, I mean, I know that it would sit there for a little bit because there's a lot of air still in the boat, but it starts sinking fast, I would imagine.
Right, and that was not a little bit. That was quite a while.
Yeah, well, it was very long, and they ran her aground.
Right, which there was like weird reports about the true story of if that happened or if it didn't happen. It seemed like there was conflicting reports if that really happened, but they thought that he just kept it afloat, but didn't run it aground. But regardless, I did really like Casey Affleck's character in this movie, which I really haven't seen him in much. I saw him in obviously Good Will Hunting because I'm not, not from Massachusetts. So I saw him in
It's a required piece of the course load for living here.
Well, right. So, I mean, clearly. But beyond that, I can't think of many other things that I've seen him in. I've seen the movie trailers for him, like, what is it, The Killer Within Me or something like that, which looks fantastic.
Manchester by the Sea is out there. I've never seen it, but it's out there. He was also in a movie with Brad Pitt. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It was something like Jesse James.
I don't even know what that is, but anyway, I really enjoyed his whole performance. I liked that arc of the movie of him, being kind of like the outcast guy where people really didn't care about him and he was kind of just like in a relationship with a boat basically. And
well, they keep joking about that where he has to marry the boat or like
right, he was really invested in what he was doing and he cared about it, and I liked that everyone kind of rallied around him even though they really didn't like him previous to that. Like, I really liked that whole thing, and I thought I could imagine it being relatable for other people who not just, like, have been out on a boat and things like that, but who have been in situations like this where you really do need to rally around other people regardless of your personal feelings for that person.
Yes, specifically the person that knows what they're talking about.
Right, but I thought that it was like a really kind of good, like, motivational type thing, like, that they were all able to do that despite their own feelings and, able to make it out alive. Like, I mean, I really liked that part of the movie, and I kind of wish that he was, like, the main character of the movie. And which is horrible for me to say because I like Chris Pine.
And he's also the one saving everyone, so he is the main character. He has to be.
Well, right, he is, but it just... Here we are, and Casey Affleck was the character that really drew me in.
No, the best characters in this movie are Tiny, the chef.
Cook, yeah.
And then Casey Affleck. Those two, both of them on the boat that broke in half, were by far the best characters in this movie.
Right, now, have you seen the chef in anything else? Because I haven't.
I have. His face is familiar. I don't remember off the top of my head what I've seen him in, but I know I've seen him in other things.
Okay. Anyways, you can go on with... Explaining what happened.
So, they are bobbing around in the ocean on half a boat, and apparently the entire Coast Guard has already gone out to help basically an identical boat that also broke in half. I didn't realize there was an epidemic of boats breaking in half that happened back then.
It was a particularly bad storm.
So everyone had gone to the other boat to try to help everyone, which they only saved, I think, 4 people off that other boat. And so there's really just Chris Pine and his 3 other Coast Guardsmen that go out on the boat.
Right. Now, they're people that generally hadn't worked together before.
Yes.
I don't know how true... I know that it is true that they weren't a elite team from the Coast Guard. I know that's true, but I don't know how true it is. Like, one of the guys said that he kind of went to, like, help, but he never, like, did a mission before. The one that's from The Big Short. He
was going there. He had been in the Coast Guard, but he was on the bigger boats, like, in the kitchens, like, peeling potatoes, I guess, or doing other things that are not going out into a winter storm with 60-foot waves and...
Right, so I don't know how true that is to the real story, but that definitely adds drama because you're like, oh god, this... And then while Bernie's, trying to get the boat over the bar, he takes off his life jacket, which is true. He did do that in real life.
Why?
For maneuverability reasons. So he could move around better to, like, get things moving. And I understand that, but at the same time, like, how? Like, that's terrifying. Like, I don't think I could do it, but...
I mean, I guess I can understand because at that point, if you get knocked out of the boat, they're not getting you back.
Right.
And the life jacket is just going to prolong your suffering at that point because it's going to keep you afloat.
That's probably true. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but okay.
So they go out, they get past the bar, the boat goes underwater, things get ripped off, they lose the compass, which actually did happen, but the roof stayed on the boat.
Now, how did you feel about the special effects and all of that with this?
I thought it was a little bit over the top because, I mean, yes, there was a lot of cool scenes, but the whole them going full submarine like 6 times seemed a little bit over the top.
So, see, I don't know about that part because I mean, I read that it was very true to the real story. That stuff, for the most part, all those effects were pretty real. And I didn't think it looked like CGI or anything like that, so I did appreciate that, and I can only imagine what the shoot must have been like. They said they had to put, like, wetsuits on and things like that to, like, keep them from, like, freezing.
Well, hypothermia, even though I didn't see a whole lot of that being played throughout the movie, so this is supposed to take place in winter, right? Mm-hmm. The whole movie? And you don't see any of them, like, the breathing, the cold air.
That's true.
Like, it could have just as easily taken place in May.
Right.
Like, just...
Right. Well, and so I can only imagine, like, how that went. But, I mean, I did think that it did add drama, and it did, like, you were just kind of like, oh my god, like, what's going to happen? Like, I definitely did think that, but I think the whole time I was, like, watching Bernie and being like, why is he still so depressed? Like, I get it. You're on this mission and you're scared or whatever, but shouldn't, like, adrenaline be pumping you up, and shouldn't you be, like, gung-ho, but, like, really you look like you're just, like, well, gonna have to go over another wave. Like, it was
I mean, it's kind of, I understand the being resigned to your fate. This sucks. We just gotta grin and bear it type. Like,
I know, but he didn't show any emotion throughout the movie, really. I mean, the happiest I saw him was at the end of the movie, and even then I was like...
Well, yeah, because he got back to shore and he's not dead.
Right, but it was just like, I don't know, I feel like in a moment like that, you'd be more pumped up, you'd be more like, because adrenaline's going to get you going, like you're...
Well, on the way back into shore, your adrenaline is gone.
Well, no, I'm talking about in this part of the movie, on the way
in that
out.
part of the movie, yes, you have adrenaline where you could rip off the throttle with your bare hands.
Right. And I mean, I feel like it's probably true to the character that he's not a very outgoing person, not very, like, manly.
Expressive and outwardly showing of how he feels internally.
Right. Which I'm sure is true to the character, and that's probably why they did it. But for a movie, it's very hard because you're just kind of like, man, like, show something. Like, come on here. Like, give me something. But it just...
Right.
And it also could be Chris Pine, although I refuse to believe that he was a bad actor because he's amazing and I love him. So I refuse to believe that it was that. But I don't know if maybe they were trying so hard to stick true to the story that they just kind of... I don't know.
I had a question about this, and I don't know how real this is for the special effects, but when they're going over the waves, they get thrown up in the air like 30 feet and then land on the boat again, and they're not, like...
Dead or broken
concussed.
bones.
Yeah, like that...
I don't know how true that is.
Or they managed to shoot straight up and then straight back down onto the boat and not into the ocean.
Okay, but I mean, have you seen movies like The Perfect Storm? Like, I feel like that this is inspired by things like that.
Well, I have seen I've actually also read The Perfect Storm because it takes place out of Gloucester, which is right near where I spent most of my summers. Mm-hmm. So...
Well, because when this movie was pitched to Hollywood, they... told them it was a mix between Saving Private Ryan and The Perfect Storm.
That's fair.
Right. So, but I'm just saying, so that obviously has some inspiration. So, you didn't get upset about that in The Perfect Storm, did you?
Well, no.
Because you're more invested in the characters.
I am more invested in the characters, honestly, for The Perfect Storm, just because it has a little bit more connection to me personally, because I grew up spending most of my time in Rockport, and I saw the aftermath of The Perfect Storm, because I was not in the 50s. So I could see what happened to just the land side of things after the storm. And I was like, oh, that was bad. So, I mean, The Perfect Storm, that kind of stuff, the No Name Storm has a better connection to me personally, just based off that.
Okay, but you can't like a movie based on its personal connection
to
you.
I know.
Terrible.
This is still a great story. It's tremendously fantastic, amazing true story. And... I still can't wait to read the book. It's on my list.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to read the book. I didn't realize that this was a Disney movie until after I watched it, because apparently I don't even remember the Disney beginning, like when they do the Mickey Ears thing. I don't or the Cinderella Castle, either one.
Well, they did the castle, but it was a CGI castle, so it's a 3D castle, not the traditional.
Oh, I missed it entirely, so I didn't know it was Disney. This is I don't know if there's more now, but this was the 9th out of 10 PG-13 Disney movies.
Okay.
Because of like the events, like the graphic events they said that happened, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But it didn't really follow a lot of Disney trends that you would think of.
What Disney trends?
Well, like at the beginning of the movie, usually someone dies. I mean, I guess someone dying, if you wanted to play that card, would be the guy at the bar's sister's husband?
Brother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess you could say that, but then, like, they usually have, like, a character who's, like, not a great character and then, like, develops into somebody better. I guess you could say, if you wanted to, that it was Bernie, but it just didn't follow to me. So
I don't understand. The guy whose brother-in-law died, based off what I heard of the actual events of that, he really can't be all that mad. Bernie went out and tried to get out past the bar, and his boat flipped. More than once.
See, so you must have read different stuff than me, because what I read is that Bernie didn't even really have anything to do with that in the real story. The only thing he had to do with was he helped retrieve the bodies, but beyond that, he had nothing to do.
That's what they were trying to get out there to retrieve the bodies, and that's when his boat flipped repeatedly. Oh, okay.
So yeah, because they said he had nothing to do with the rescue mission at all. It was just him retrieving the bodies, but and that the guy wasn't angry with him. It was just that was added for dramatic effect, which I don't think really added anything to the story. If anything, it was more confusing. It was kind of like, okay, what is this guy's deal, and like, what do you have to do with anything?
Well, I understood that someone close to him had died, and he blamed Bernie for it at the start of the movie. You didn't get that, and we had this whole back and forth argument.
Well, it wasn't that I didn't get that. It was that he hadn't said it yet. You were insinuating from what he said, but they hadn't actually said that part yet, and I don't like reading into movies like that because
I read into things all the time.
Yeah, but movies tend to try to mislead you, so I try really hard to like keep that judgment to myself until it's confirmed, because movies try to mislead you. That's just the way movies work.
Right. I mean, especially if there's a twist ending, it's always they set it up so you think one way and then
right. Now this movie didn't do any of that. It was all kind of just
No, this is a straightforward, true story adventure movie. Not really the twist ending one, although it does have a happy ending. So
I wouldn't say the twist ending, though. You knew going into the movie how it ended, regardless of if you knew the story.
Well, there was at one point in the middle of the movie, you're like, they all die? Because it didn't look very good.
Yeah, but no, that's not what happened.
No. Everyone gets out, except for the chef, which sucks.
Which is true.
Yes. But he didn't die that way. They actually hit him with the boat, the small rescue boat, because he fell out and he was 300 pounds and they couldn't get him in the boat and he drifted away and they tried to get him back. And
yeah. Oh, well, that's part of the story I did not need.
Why?
Because I just
that's what happened.
It's sad. He was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, it was quite a shame. So, all right. I wish they had included more of like the aftermath in this. Like when they're coming back to shore, Bernie has lost the compass and like they have no real way to navigate, and his boss is saying, "Go to this boat, it's right there." And he just says, "Nope, not doing that. I'm going to do what I want."
Well, and they set that up in the beginning of the movie because he kept saying it's regulation. Like, he went and asked if he could get married because it's regulation. Like, they set it up that he wasn't going to ever break regulation. Right. So when he did, I think that was supposed to be his character development.
So is it just the Coast Guard, or does everyone in the armed services have to ask permission?
See, I read that the Coast Guard definitely does. I think it is all armed services, but it's not like a requirement. It's a formality type thing.
Right. I mean, I think I remember my parents having to ask if they could get married. So I guess that makes sense.
Right.
I'd have to ask them because I was not around for that, obviously. But
right. And I do think that's part of the reason that they had them not married is so that they could add more of the it's regulation storyline to the movie. But still, again, bothers me.
Yeah.
But regardless, so I don't really have much else to say about the movie just because it was not my favorite movie in the world. I feel like I'm going to really like the book because I am super interested in the real story. I will say that one thing I do want to do is apparently you can tour the real boat in Orleans, Massachusetts.
Yes, it's about 2 hours.
It's a drive, but I feel like it would be really interesting, and they apparently give you like a little talk tour type thing and explain what happened, so I'd be super interested to do that. I will also say that the author did reach out to us on Twitter and let us know that they are going to be listening to this, so if I get ever hear his side of the story and like what didn't make it into the book, I would be so interested to hear that, because I just find this kind of stuff really interesting. I love true stories. And I just feel like the movie just didn't give me enough. Like, I feel like maybe too, because it's a Disney movie, I was looking for more of like the drama and like what happened and the real stuff. And
I was looking for the underneath stuff a little bit more. Like, they didn't have a whole lot just below the surface. It was just the movie goes through, and then it was more
fluffy than I would have.
It was lacking depth. Yes.
Right. So I am more interested now to know more, which I'm probably going to do more research, because that's what I do, is go down rabbit holes.
Yes.
But
for days, weeks at a time.
Right. So we didn't get much in audience ask for this. I don't think a lot of people have seen this movie, to be honest, because normally we get at least 5 or 6 people that reach out, and that didn't happen. So the only question we got was from Movies with the Misses. They said, can Casey Affleck use any other accents?
No.
Decidedly no.
No, he does the Boston accent better than anyone, including his brother.
Well, he's from here.
Yes, well, I know. That's why it's funny, because his brother is also from here.
Well, someone did comment back and said he does use a southern accent in New Old Man and the Gun with Robert Redford. So I don't know what that movie is. I cannot picture him doing a southern accent at all. But I will say, just because the accents are brought up, that it does bother me slightly that they have such thick Boston accents in the Cape. I don't know if maybe I'm just not familiar with people in the Cape that have Boston accents. But, I mean, we're from Southern Mass. We don't have Boston accents. If we do, it's very slight. I know people from the Cape that don't. Maybe it's like a regional type thing, like certain areas, but it bothered me most of the movie.
It's this weird thing where everyone from Massachusetts, regardless of whether it's Boston or specifically South Boston or Framingham, Worcester, Springfield, doesn't matter. They have the same accent. But that's not true. No, it's not true. I mean, I've been told that my accent is hard to place because I don't have the stereotypical Boston accent.
Right.
At least according to other people. I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of that. Maybe it's also a combination of we don't hear it because we...
Well, no, but we also border Rhode Island, and the Cape isn't far off from Rhode Island, and they have their own accent.
Oh, the Rhode Island accent is obnoxious.
Well, but I know mine is mixed because my dad's side of the family is from Rhode Island and my mom's side of the family is from Mass, so I have a mixed accent, and a lot of people...
That's not how accents work. It's from where you grow up.
No, it is how it works, because, my dad says coffee.
Coffee?
Where my mom says coffee. So so there's a mix.
No.
So regardless...
No, we're fixing that now. It's coffee.
But regardless... So I think a lot of people do have influences from Rhode Island, too, so the accent isn't quite as thick.
Right.
But... maybe that's just me, but that irritated me throughout the movie, and I am super sensitive on Boston accents in movies because they feel like they're over-exaggerated and placed in the wrong spots. But that's...
Well, it's people that aren't from Boston attempting the Boston accent, and it's always the wildly dramatized "Park the car, have it yet."
Yeah, which, I mean, unless you live in the heart of Boston, you're not talking like that.
Well, even then, you don't talk like that. No one speaks like that. That's just insane.
Well, I mean...
Pack the cat, have it yet. What? I'm sorry? One more time?
Okay, I'm sure people will disagree with you on that. But regardless, anyway, so I wish that I had more, happy things to say about it, because I wanted to love this movie. I really did, but...
I didn't care for the movie. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the book, because it's right up my alley with the true story, and... I mean, I read Last Stand of the Tin Can Sailors, which is a Navy movie, or Navy book, rather than a Coast Guard, but it's still a true story, and I couldn't put it down. So I'm imagining it's the same for the book.
Right. So I mean, if anybody wants to hear an update after we've read the book, we can always do that later on. We will be doing a video based on this. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be yet, but we will post on Twitter and get feedback from you guys. But that will be coming out soon. So overall rating?
Overall rating, I'm going to say 6.5.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I will say 7 because I did really like the story, and it did make me interested to learn more.
Right.
So
I just, after researching this, I wish they had put in a little bit of the human interest pieces at the end, where Bernie had to get a letter formally written by an admiral saying you did the right thing by disobeying orders to get out of trouble. Also, the fact that he stood by his men in terms of he was going to get recognized by the Coast Guard with the highest honor, and they were going to get the second highest honor, and he's like, no, I'm not going to take it. They were on the same. It was the same boat.
Right.
So,
right. Oh, I agree with you there. So next week we are doing my pick.
Yes.
Which is Quiz Show. Neither one of us have seen it, and since he's obsessed with trivia and believes he's,
I'm not obsessed with trivia. I don't.
You might be. So I thought it would be interesting.
Great.
It's apparently a true story again, which apparently we're obsessed with true stories. Who knew? So I'm interested to see that and see how you feel about that movie since you're not super excited about it, which makes me depressed.
I'm not honestly super excited about it, but we'll see. It's kind of weird that we've done so many true stories. Quiz Show, The Finest Hours, Manchurian Candidate. Spotlight.
Yeah, I don't know how these things happen, but here we are. So I guess we like true stories. Who knew? So, okay.
You didn't catch the Manchurian Candidate, but that's okay.
Well, I try real hard to keep politics out of the podcast. So one last thing before we end the podcast, I wanted to give our thank you to Jake at Athos Music for our intro and outro music. So I'm looking forward to next week with Quiz Show.
And I'm cautiously optimistic.